Well, actually, there's no risk at all eating red meat. Dietary cholesterol is necessary. Too many carbs. Too many carbs.
What? What the fuck? What's going on, guys? Scott here from Level Up Wellness, and today, to no one's surprise, Joe Rogan spitting some bro science. Now, full disclosure here, I actually quite enjoy the Joe Rogan podcast from time to time, depending on the guest he has. And honestly, Joe has a lot of really interesting and great thoughts about a lot of different things. It's one of the reasons he's so popular. But that isn't going to stop me from critiquing some of his, well, less than stellar information, as you'll see.
Too many carbs.
Huh?
Now, I usually don't bother making videos like this unless the thing that somebody says is potentially harmful or just completely flat out wrong. And this kind of fits that bill, since diet is the leading cause of death and disability, and people deserve better. Now, before we jump into things, if you think this information is worth knowing, or that more people should know about it, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button, as well as drop a comment. All those things are free, and they really help push out the video to more people. Anyway, without further ado, here we go.
I think there's been quite a psyop on people in general, like, red meat and it's going to sit in your colon forever and you're going to get cancer, you're going to die from it. And I think nothing could be further from the truth.
Yeah, that's definitely not true.
Does anybody still really believe that meat sits in your colon forever? I don't know about you, but I sure as heck don't know those people. It's obviously not true, and I think that goes without saying. But the blatant dismissal of the cancer risk is what caught my attention. First off, the World Health Organization classifies red meat as a probable carcinogen. That's up there with things like glyphosate, the active ingredient in Roundup, and inorganic lead compounds. It also lists any processed meat as a class 1 carcinogen. That means we know it straight up causes cancer. For context, that group holds the same things as like cigarettes, x-rays, asbestos, and alcohol. And this is backed up by both the American Cancer Society and the International Agency for Cancer Research. This can be due to a lot of different factors. For example, IGF-1. When you consume animal protein, your body upregulates the production of a hormone called IGF-1, also known as insulin-like growth factor 1. And this IGF-1 is a potent promoter of cancer in all stages of its growth, development, and metastases. And this 2020 study, which is the most comprehensive look at the relationship between IGF-1 and cancer, also confirms this connection. Joe's guest, Adam, is clearly eating a lot of red meat, and probably a decent amount of processed meat, as he says that he's eating bacon, so I wouldn't be surprised if there's more.
We'll do hog, or we'll do bacon sometimes in the morning, and eggs. But yeah.
Here's the thing. When it comes to things like the Carnivore Diet and other people saying things contrary to this, they really very rarely cite any actual human research. Probably because it doesn't really exist.
Uh-oh, how unfortunate.
Instead, they give us a lot of good news about our bad habits and that sound really good on the surface, and, we like to eat it up. Who wouldn't?
I believe every word that man just said, because it's exactly what I wanted to hear.
But when we're talking about something as serious as cancer, that's just not good enough. And all of this really isn't even mentioning all of the other things that possibly cause cancer in red and processed meats, like heme iron, nitrites, new 5-GC, and bacterial endotoxins. There is a lot of research on all those different things, but we simply just don't have time for that. Maybe in another video. We gotta move on.
And for some people, I don't know if carnivore is the way to go, but I've done it, and I'm doing it now because it's January, and January's World Carnivore Month.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Congratulations. Yay.
Just an interesting thought about January and World Carnivore Month. You might be familiar with another trend called Veganuary, which also happens to be in January. And I almost guarantee that that is totally intentional, because it's really made up of a ton of people who just really like to talk about how much vegans suck. By the way, speaking of vegans, going back to our previous point about IGF-1, people who eat more plant-based diets, and specifically vegans, have lower levels of IGF-1, lowering their risk of many different cancers.
It's amazing how many people do it and feel good, though. It's really weird.
Well, Joe, it might be a mystery to you, but to anybody who really understands some basic human biology and nutrition, it's really not that much of a mystery. See, the carnivore diet is an extreme example of something called an elimination diet.
This is what it is. It's an elimination diet.
That's where you eliminate things like common food triggers as well as all other processed junk. So it's no wonder people say they feel hugely better when they adopt that lifestyle. But there's something else at play here. See, many carnivore dieters claim that eating plant foods increases their inflammation and that they just don't feel great. And while it's really easy just to point the finger at them and say that they're lying or something, that's actually probably not what's happening. Now, this is a little complicated and nuanced, so follow me for a minute. So the carnivore diet seems to appeal to and work really well for people who have pre-existing gut problems. Makes sense, right? Now with that info in mind, I want to bring your attention to some really new and very interesting research. There's a lot here and it's complicated, but we'll summarize. Basically, in the group of people eating more fiber, there were 3 different subcategories who had kind of different reactions. Now, 2 of these groups actually experienced a decrease in inflammation when eating more fiber from things like plant foods. But the 3rd group experienced an increase in inflammation. That's the opposite of what usually happens, so what's going on here? Here's where it gets really interesting. See, the people who had higher inflammation when consuming more plant fiber actually had lower gut microbiome diversity at the start of the study, and vice versa for the other groups. Now we're starting to see how things might come together. Carnivore dieters talk about reduced inflammation when eliminating plants, and a lot of them also tend to have pre-existing gut problems, like we said. And just like in this study, it's very likely that they had a very unhealthy gut ecosystem when they started the diet. It's no wonder they feel so much better. But this is not a problem with plant foods, because we have literal mountains of evidence showing that the more whole plant foods you eat and the greater variety and diversity, the healthier your gut ecosystem gets. Seriously, it's not even up for debate. There is just no question about that in the scientific literature. So strong. Instead, it likely just means that these people who started the carnivore diet didn't have the bacteria in their digestive system to break down the fiber efficiently. And here's the real kicker. The researchers in this study literally mentioned just that. I mean, you can't make this stuff up, man. So for people doing the carnivore diet, the better course of action would just be to correct the pre-existing gut problems they likely already have, not just cover up the symptoms by not adding fuel onto the fire that's already raging. Let's put out the fire. But it gets even funnier because, oh my gosh, are you ready for this? Here's one of the most egregious loads of dishonesty I've ever seen. Carnivore dieters actually tried to spin this exact study in their favor.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
They do this by cherry picking. I don't like using that term, but it's absolutely what it is. They cherry pick little bits and pieces of the study that seem to support their hypothesis and the conclusion, but they absolutely, unequivocally do not. Look, I know in science it pays to try to be, as neutral as possible, but there's no 2 ways around it. It's absolutely dishonest. It's cherry picking. I don't know how else you could see it.
Well, there's these guys who I met. They're actually in Bastrop, the Meat Mafia. They had guys like 28, and they were high school or college athletes. And when they left college, their bodies just broke down. And, they were, like bowel problems and shitting 20 times a day. And just, and both of them, independently, just all kinds of issues. And someone turned them on to pure, a carnivore diet. Within 2 weeks, all of those problems went 20 years of problems, and then all those problems, or 15 years, all the problems went away.
Now you see how that story Adam just told perfectly summarizes what we just talked about? What a coincidence. I mean, it's just crazy. I mean, what are the chances?
I think there's a lot of people out there that are allergic to gluten.
Oh, of course. Gluten is a real problem.
I think that's
it's
a real
inflammatory.
issue. Yeah. I think there's a lot of people that they're allergic to it and they don't realize it, and they don't realize that eating like that and eating a lot of bread and a lot of pasta, they think of it as food and this is just how I feel. But then if you just eliminate that food, all of a sudden your body just relaxes.
Okay, that actually kind of hurt. But seriously, Joe? I usually don't like going so hard at people like this because in science, there's a lot of subtlety. But at this point, Joe is just a broken record of low-carb talking points. Well, Joe, no. There's actually not a lot of people that are allergic to gluten. About 1% of people do have celiac disease, and for them, gluten is absolutely a huge problem, and they really should never, ever eat it. And approximately another 1 to 3% of people have something called non-celiac gluten intolerance, and for them, gluten might cause some issues. But the weird thing is, a ton of people think that they have a problem with gluten when they really don't. And this has been shown in controlled trials. It's basically an elaborate placebo effect. We don't have time to go into it. I mean, gluten is found in a ton of different processed foods, and when you eliminate gluten, you inadvertently end up, eating a lot better as a result, so it's no wonder that people feel better when they eliminate gluten as well. Gluten has really become synonymous with bad health in pop nutrition culture, so people kind of have this placebo effect when they really don't have a problem with gluten at all. And I actually used to be one of these people. See, I used to struggle with a lot of severe digestive problems, and I actually have an autoimmune condition. That's one of the reasons I started this channel. Blah-de-blah-de-blah. I used to think that I had a problem with gluten. And that's just because I had heard a ton about it, and because my autoimmune condition was connected to a lot of digestive troubles, I kind of just assumed I had some kind of non-celiac gluten intolerance. But after repeated testing in a really controlled setting when I've been in a very stable state, I don't have any problems with gluten at all. Bottom line is, gluten's really not that big of a problem. Exclude it from your diet if you want, but don't fool yourself into thinking that it's somehow a problem for everybody. Now, Adam and Joe aren't done throwing some of this stuff back and forth because there's just so much bro science being thrown around. But if you want a part 2, where I cover all the other things that they say, go ahead and hit the like button, comment, subscribe, let me know that you like it. In summary, I really wish I could have more positive feedback on this, but I'm just being honest. Joe constantly is throwing around low-carb agenda rhetoric. There's just no way around it. However, it's really clear that Joe eats and lives way better than the average person. That's no doubt. But he's definitely bought into this low-carb agenda, hook, line, and sinker. So I hope I didn't come across as, too condescending at points, but I just think people really deserve better, and, with as popular as he is, hopefully I can just undo even just a tiny bit of what he does. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. As always, if you got any value out of this video, please consider adding value back to my channel by liking, commenting, and hitting that subscribe button below, as well as the bell icon next to it. Helps my channel out a ton, and it pushes videos and information out to more people. So if nothing else, I'll see you guys very soon, and God bless y'all.